During The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry must master the Patronus charm if he is to tackle Dementors, these foul creatures who feast on misery. Fortunately, Harry does this near the end and proclaims Expecto Patronum, thus stopping the Dementor's kiss. This is a marvellous example of Latin being used in a fantasy context. In fact, most Harry Potter spells take linguistic inspiration from Latin, as do other blockbuster fantasy series, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Charmed. Yet, why? What is it about the Latin language that makes it so magical and perfect for spellcasting? In this video, I will investigate the connection between Latin and magic by giving a particular focus on the Middle Ages. However, I'll also consider other languages and whether they too are suitable for magic. I'm Madeleine Rose Jones and I study history, literature and culture. Welcome to Snowy Fictions. First, it's important to acknowledge that magic is not restricted to Latin. Throughout history, various cultures and individuals engaged in so-called magical practice by creating talismans and manuscripts with magical characteristics. For example, we have the Greek magical papyri, which comes from Egypt during antiquity and features magical rituals and spells written in Coptic and Greek. We also have manuscripts in Old High German from the early Middle Ages which depict magical spells and herbal recipes. As for literature, many European and Asian languages enjoy a strong tradition in writing about magical occurrences, often entering into the spheres of religion, science, and myth. Even when a culture has a negative attitude towards magic, as did the Islamic world in the Middle Ages, they still produce writings about magic, as we can see in Arabic. Interestingly, medieval Latin took cues from Semitic language traditions, namely Arabic, Hebrew, Syriac, and Aramaic. Take the word algebra, which comes from the Arabic al-jabr, and was transformed through medieval Latin. After all, the Middle Ages saw an intense intellectual tradition throughout Europe and Asia, where translation played a huge role from Baghdad to Paris. This intellectualism, I'd argue, is crucial in understanding the magic in contemporary Anglophone literature. In both Harry Potter and Buffy, magic is something you have to learn through spells, rituals, and objects. There is certainly something educational about magic in fantasy literature. This, I'd argue, is a perfect explanation for why Latin is so magical. From ancient Rome to the Reformation, much of Europeans' intellectual culture comes from the Latin language. Latin was expressed through science, Christianity, astrology, the law, historiography, theatre, and high art. Latin, therefore, took on an educational tone and became crucial to the formation of the medieval universities from Bologna in Italy to Edinburgh in Scotland. Latin was truly the vehicle medieval individuals used to make sense of the world around them. Therefore, it makes sense for Harry Potter to have so many different Latin spells, from Expelliarmus, but also dark ones, such as Crucio, one of the unforgivable curses. For Latin was also the language for darkness, whether neuromancy or sorcery. Whilst the Catholic Church had clear boundaries for acceptable and non-acceptable speech, there were incidents for transgressions, radicalism, and even heresy. Even when many heretical documents were destroyed, there are still Latin writings on various dark subjects. A good example comes from the Cathars, the heretical sect in southern France during the High Middle Ages. It is also through Latin the West developed an understanding of what magic is and how to approach it. Useful concepts in magical history, such as natural and demonic magic, were frequently interpreted and written about in Latin, the language of medieval intellectualism and thought. Whilst the lingua franca of both angels and demons, Latin had turned into the language men and women used to understand, to learn, to communicate, to think, and to imagine. Hence, we associate magic with Latin, and in my opinion, will continue to do so. There is another explanation for the use of Latin in contemporary fantasy. In our modern era, Latin has a reputation for being antiquated, historic, and old. Unfortunately, Latin is frequently called a dead language, and most high schools in the Anglosphere simply don't teach it anymore. This comes at a time where ancient and medieval history is underfunded and undertaught. As a consequence, Latin has a level of prestige and coolness about it. If you've ever read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, perhaps you know what I'm getting at here. Latin today is synonymous with posh schools, higher education, dark academia, and elite groups. Latin, therefore, earns association with these elements. When I think about Latin in the 21st century, I immediately think of an archivist at a Vatican library, fussing over translations and old books. Fantasy literature has always drawn inspiration from the past, and Latin is just one part of this. Admittedly, an exciting one. Finally, I want to stress that not every fantasy writer takes magical cues from Latin. One incredible example is Tolkien, whose Middle-earth appears more in line with Germanic languages such as Old Norse, Middle High German, Gothic, and yes, Older Middle English. There is of course influence by Celtic languages too, which offers an interesting contrast to the Latin-based world of Harry Potter. This of course raises a great discussion about what other languages are suitable for magic. What languages do you find magical? Do you have a favourite Harry Potter spell? I'd love to read your thoughts, so comment below and let's start a discussion. If you'd like, subscribe for frequent videos on history, literature and culture. I also have a monthly mailing list and Skillshare classes on creative writing. Regardless, thanks for watching and I will see you soon.